All right, 40 Waters, welcome back to this week's episode of the 40 Watt Podcast. My name is Philip, as it has been for the last season and a half. Really appreciate you tuning in, listening, hanging out with us. Especially thank you all your Patreon supporters that are gone over, giving me your hard-earned money to make sure I don't go broke doing this. I can't thank you enough for the support that you are giving me. It means the absolute world to me. This week I'm super excited. I've got Blake, and I didn't ask, is it Kaiser or Kaiser?
It's Kaiser.
Kaiser. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what
there
I
you
was
go.
going to say, but I want to make sure. Y'all think I prep for these episodes. I do, but the one thing I keep forgetting to do is getting people to pronounce their names for me. So, Blake from Kaiser, Kaisertronics. I almost said Kaiser Electronics, but that's not right. It's Kaisertronics.
Close enough. There you go.
Close enough. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well actually. Super pumped to have you on the show. I've been following you on Instagram, checking out your pedals. You seem to make every gain pedal that's out there. You make a version of it. Um,
I like the dirt.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely not. So, let's do the overview. Let's do that first, so that all of our listeners, my listeners that don't already know who you are and what you do, tell them, how'd you get into music, how'd you get into playing guitar, and what possessed you to do this insane thing of starting a pedal company.
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from the West Coast, from Washington State, but I quickly made my way out to Nashville and lived in Nashville for 17 some odd years, and basically worked in various, aspects of the music industry ever since I was a kid. And from that point out, I just, kind of kept going with, all of that sort of, guitar based things. I started playing guitar when I was 9, and, I got signed at 12 and did that until I was, like 18. And then I started in the
Wow.
studio side. And so from that point out, you always develop a love of gear in the studio side, especially if you want to be an engineer, to some degree. And so that's probably like really where I kind of cultivated a lot of love for circuits, and trying to understand what things did. Compressors were mind blowing to me, that you could throw a distressor on something and it would affect it so much, or an
Yeah.
LA2A or something like that. And so from that point out, I kind of moved around in the United States, and I didn't really think about pedals until 2012. And I had found myself with a little bit of time on my hands. I'd moved to the middle of nowhere in Arkansas, and I was looking for something to keep me busy and out of trouble, I guess. And so I started building, simple circuits, clones and copies, and making utility pedals, like for, universal tap tempos for like all of my delays, because apparently back then you had to have like 5 delay pedals on your board. And so I was trying
That's different now.
to
Dang it.
yeah. um I've definitely reduced my delay amounts, but yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, I kind of like shelved the idea after a year or so, because I was just kind of like, I don't know enough about this. Like I know enough to copy, but I didn't know enough to create anything I was happy about myself, And so as time went on, I kind of just you know put it on the back burner and just kind of learned some stuff along the way. But then, of course, COVID hit, and everybody found themselves in a new frame of life and how life would work. And, and I ended up having another stint of a lot of time on my hands. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want to just go, I'm going to start building kits again, or like copying circuits. I was like, dude, I have to try to figure this out. Like, and I watched as many YouTube videos on circuits, and trying to understand how all that stuff worked and everything like that. And I still, am learning every single day that I do this, but I really wanted to, do it justice, right? And try to learn about what I was going to do before I was going to do it. And so from that point out, invested in some nice gear that would help me along the way, and started to build. And it kind of just snowballed. Last year was my first year of doing pedals, and it just it seemed to have gone off a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit. So yeah, super excited to even be able to build and have people enjoy my stuff. That still blows my mind.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And it's kind of a recurring thing that I'm hearing in podcasting of people starting things in 2020.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
maybe they started in 2019, but they really, really hunkered down on it in 2020 because obviously a lot of people had a lot of time on their hands. Uh,
yeah,
you
yep.
know, like
And
starting
especially
podcasts.
creatives. Yeah, yeah, that too. Creatives to any degree have that drive, and I would be one that says everybody's creative to some degree, but I think the guys that are entrepreneurial have this desire to build things or use their hands to kind of like create something, right? And then for me, it's always been I'm not content just keeping it at, oh, I'm building pedals for myself. No,
Right.
anything that I did, I ran a business before this restoring old tobacco pipes, right? Like, and that just exploded from just restoring stuff on eBay that I would buy to then representing artists all over the world that do, artisan pipes, which are higher end stuff. And so, I mean, that was really cool. And for me, it was a natural progression because that's just kind of what's in me. I want to try to, um, you know, expand and make things bigger, those
Yeah.
kind of things.
Well, no, it's super cool. And so, you know, talking more about the pedals that you build, you do obviously a lot of fuzz and a lot of circuits.
Yeah.
Uh, you've got this industrial aesthetic that I really love. Actually, before we were talking, I picked up some of my Brainiac FX pedals that also have a similar like industrial
Yeah.
feel to them.
Yeah.
I really, really love pedals that use these dial styles.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really love it, and I like amp jewels too, but that's a whole other ball game. I know not everybody's into the amp jewel because, as Eric told me, he said they take up a lot of room. It's a lot of
Yeah.
room to use an amp jewel in a circuit.
Yeah.
So
You got to have some oversized boxes for that for sure.
yeah. So what? First of all, you're drawn to dirt circuits, which is just fine by me. It's my favorite. I think it's the pedal that most guitar players have the most of. There's that occasional guitar player who's got more delay pedals than they have anything, or more
Mm-hmm.
modulation pedals than they have anything. But most of the time, it's overdrives and fuzzes and distortion pedals, and that's me by far. Um, so how'd you arrive at the aesthetic that you use? Because it's this really cool industrial, like names are stamped metal or engraved metal on nameplates. It's
Yeah.
something I really appreciate. It feels almost like Cold Warish. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up with a real love of aviation, and I was kind of surrounded by a lot of mid-century design for whatever reason growing up, and that had a big influence on me. And so those two things were kind of synonymous. That era of 1930s to 60s is kind of like the pinnacle for some of that really cool utility looking stuff that the Army put out, and every other RCA made some really brutal looking stuff, and like just
oh yeah,
overbuilt, just that idea of like steel and just grit. I mean, it was really cool. And so I that stuck with me. And so I think, especially planes, if you go in an old like DC3 or something like that, man, they're just like, they don't care about your comfort. They don't care about anything. They just are there to, check the box and
yeah.
do what
It's
they're
just got to
supposed to
work.
do. Yeah, exactly. And yet the weird thing about that is they're so beautiful. I mean, like an old, DC3 is, even the wartime C-47 is like, it's just one of the most aesthetically pleasing looking, aircraft out there. And it's classic for a reason, and so that stuck with me. And that was something that I wanted to try to integrate. I didn't really have plans to do it into my pedals, but definitely in the logo. That was
Oh
like,
sure.
aeronautics kind of based and everything like that. And then um, the natural progression to hit the pedal was like, man, how do I make this just look cool with the resources that I have, you know, because I didn't have a lot starting out, and
Yeah.
you kind of go for the less is more, and you just try to make it look iconic, you know, and that's exactly what the Army did. I mean, it was like they weren't trying to make aesthetically pleasing stuff. They just hand stamped some, you know, really cool dog tag looking stuff, or like, you know, ID tag looking things, and stuck it on the, you know, equipment, and that was it. And it was necessity based because they didn't, you know, have a lot of materials that they could waste to do it. And so I don't know. I guess that's where my brain was going.
Yeah. Also, I noticed like the finishes on your enclosures. You do everything from like as like drab black and green as you can to some sparkle and metal flake finishes.
Yeah.
Some pretty interesting things. And you may not do you finish your own enclosures, or you have that done?
Recently, I just started doing it. I got a powder coating set up, and I am now officially powder coating, which is
That's
super
cool.
cool. That's something I've wanted to do for motorcycles and everything else that I've, you know, like all my project stuff that I do. And so I was super excited. That was something that Harrison Zollinger got me into, and I'm really thankful for him to, you know, share his knowledge and really kind of push me to buy a setup and do it.
Yeah, see, that's really cool. There's not a lot of people out there doing their own powder coating
Yeah.
for the pedals, and I don't actually genuinely know if it's actually a cost savings, but it gives you some options that maybe when you're getting it contractually done, you don't get,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
get to decide what you're willing to do and not willing to do.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's minimums too. So if you like want somebody else to do it, you usually have a pretty stiff minimum you have to hit, and that
Hmm.
makes it kind of, you know, unattainable for some people that are small builders. But I look at powder coating kind of like brewing beer. You're like, you're not really saving a lot, but you do
Yeah.
have a lot of options. You can do exactly what you want to do, you know?
Yeah, it's super cool. And it gives them a unique look, and it lets you sort of stand out because you have every creative control over how your enclosures look, how everything happens, because we live in a world where even on a pedal board, where let's be honest, tone is slash should be the most important thing, the sounds you get from the pedal. That's not enough anymore. You need to have an aesthetic. You need to be, visually pleasing to some people.
Yeah.
uh, the Boss utility pedal looks great. It's fine, but you put that next to some of the stuff that the more artistic brands are putting out there. Someone like your Walrus Audio or your Earthquaker devices or your, you need to be able to swing in the same ballparks as what these guys are putting out.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, if you're just starting out and you don't have the clout of, say, Boss to just make a very utilitarian pedal like that,
Yeah.
you have to stick out. Like by necessity, you do. And that's why, you know, if you go on Reverb and find these, you know, guys that are just building like pedal PCB, you know, kit clones, those kind of things, and they just put it in a standard enclosure, they don't sell for any money. You know, and yet there is guys that are bigger builders that still use some of those pedal PCB boards in their builds. But man, they have a great attention to detail, both exterior, like the exterior and the interior. The wiring is essential. You really have to clean that up to, you know, to you charge, you know, any sort of money. And it's just good practice too. It really does cut the noise down, and it's a sign that you kind of take your trade seriously, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So backtracking just a little bit, you said you were signed early. You want to talk about that experience?
I do not.
Okay.
No, I don't
Well,
care.
yeah.
I mean, I grew up, like, you know, literally grew up in the music industry. When I moved to Nashville, I was 8. And the next year, my parents bought me a guitar for my birthday, and they got me an electric, which I think was like the biggest game changer ever. Because that really, I was terrible at sports. I was terrible at like any sort of extracurricular activities. You know, I dropped out of high school. You know, I mean, like I am not a learned man, and music really was something that I connected with. And so when I got that, um, my parents really my they pushed me really hard, so they didn't give me an out. And so it wasn't like you get a guitar and you just get to hang it on your wall or just put it on a stand in your room. Like I was practicing hours and hours and hours a day.
Oh wow.
And it was something that, immediately I got a teacher. I had, expectations, and quickly through that process, they sort of found out I was an ear player. I wasn't a chart guy very, very much. And so that really like changed the trajectory of where it was headed musically. And quickly after that, we had some friends that were in the music industry, and his son and me. He had kind of wanted to start a band, and the dad owned a record label. And so when I say sign, that could be, as well as I do, that doesn't need to be like this huge thing. So like, it's not like a power play when I say that. It was a progression, a step on the evolution of what kind of like brought me here that I really do value. I look back, and while that situation wasn't the best and it didn't work out the best in the end, it really set me in a direction that I still see myself headed in now. And so after that ended a few years later, I think I was 16 when I got out of my first contract. Then I got into a production deal with another situation, and I started touring the blues industry, and that was really where I kind of cut my teeth on playing, with people, playing live, playing, outside of just like a punk, rock kids kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then getting serious and actually getting into good music. And so I had some really cool experiences in that era of playing. But then I realized after a couple of years of doing that I was just burned with touring. I am not cut out for that. And so after a few years of doing that, I was like, man, I really want to do, studio stuff. And that was kind of the next era of me in the music industry in Nashville. So, yeah.
Well, it's funny because I can sort of relate to that. Not that I was signed, but my sister went through a similar thing. She was signed to a small blues record label when she was very young. I think she was 11 when she was signed.
Yeah.
And it ended up not being really the situation she needed to be in. It wasn't the right situation. When she's young, and my mom didn't know better, and I didn't know better, obviously to advise them, it just ended up not working out. And then she got out of that contract and was working on some other stuff. She was doing some alt rock stuff, and this is post Evanescence kind of taking the world by storm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she was sort of in that vein ish, not as maybe heavy as Evanescence was, a little more pop focused, but started talking with some other record label folks, did some demo stuff, some 6-7 song EPs, and everyone kept trying to sign her to at one point she was in talks with Sony or a Sony derivative, one of the sub labels of Sony, and they kept they'd start the conversation. I love this. They'd start it out, oh, we love what you do, we love your songs, love your, blah 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 blah, and then it wasn't very long before they started saying, okay, we just need to change this. We just need to do this.
Yeah.
We just need to do this, and it just became a, nah, screw that. That's not happening. So it all eventually fell through, which is fine. I think it worked out better for her either way. She still gets to play music for fun, and she's still incredible. But it's such a weird industry when you talk about being signed and when you say that, because especially in the blues industry, which which you've been around, you've seen, blues is a strange world. It's its own animal.
Yeah, initially when my first contract was with a band in the Christian industry. And so that was in and of itself is a very interesting sub situation. We were on an imprint of Warner, and so I mean it was technically, I guess, a decent idea of getting signed. But I again, it was the same thing. I didn't have any control over what we were doing. I didn't write any songs. I just led, as the front guy, played guitar and sang, and that was it, and so it just was, it wasn't, you didn't get that creative freedom, but you're also a kid. You're just trying to figure life out, but then past that, I was, one of my teachers was Reggie Wooten in Nashville.
Oh yeah.
And he would, man, that guy, he was incredible, and very instrumental in teaching me how to branch out and try to find myself in, because I'm a lead player. I'm not like a
Yeah.
great rhythm player or anything. And so, um, man, that was really pivotal. And past that, then I really started to get in with, the blues thing just really kind of resonated with me. And, the other thing about it is like my dad did that whole be your manager situation,
Ooh.
which my parents and me get along great.
Yeah.
They're now divorced, and remarried and everything. But like that put so much stress and pressure on that whole idea of like, I mean, he was just, always putting that hammer down. And my mom was kind of the same on the back end of playing and getting better. And like, this is like when Johnny Lang got really big. I don't really remember
I
Johnny
do.
Lang, but like, so like I was like, this kid with long hair and, all this same similar kind of, I've always had a little bit of a raspy voice and like all this stuff. And so at that point, like, oh, I'm going to be the next freaking Johnny Lang or some crap, and like, so much so that my dad's like getting me in to meet Johnny Lang and like to play with Johnny Lang and all this crap. And it's like, this is not like, I'm trying to like figure out who I am. Right.
Yeah.
But you don't get, you're still a kid. I was like 16, trying to figure out what life is all about and who I wanted to be. And that didn't come until way later because of that kind of stuff. And so, and I think that kind of like contributed to why I was just so burned out of, you have such expectations and people trying to tell you who you need to be.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know who I was supposed to be. And so, but I just knew that some of that stuff seemed really inauthentic to me,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you see that in folks who get started that young. And excuse me, sorry about that. You see that with like and you see it in all genres. It's not just blues. Like, Johnny Lang started out really, really young in the blues scene. I remember he had a Disney special at one point. Do you remember that?
Dude,
Yeah.
that was so big. Like oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm not even gonna go into it. Yeah. But yes, I remember all that. And that's like scars from my childhood now, but yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember watching that Disney special.
Yeah, because he was like the crossover. He was like making blues cool.
Yep,
which
absolutely.
is so weird. Like the idea of blues being mainstream again was like, it was like Eric Clapton was doing it, in like the mid '90s, and then it kind of like progressed. And Johnny Lang was your new, heartthrob blues guy. So weird.
It was a weird time. Still a huge fan of Johnny Lang. I don't know if you know, he recently got off the road, some issues with his voice. He can't do the thing anymore.
Oh my gosh, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Dude,
like
his voice
indefinitely, as far as he knows, off the road.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, there was that whole Johnny Lang thing. But then, like, even in other genres, like, I remember very distinctly. Remember when Mandy Moore came out? Like, everybody knew when Mandy Moore came out, right?
Yeah.
It was like she hit the real young, hit the scene, did like this poppy, super poppy stuff that she wasn't writing. Somebody else was doing it.
Like everybody else in that era.
Yeah, and then she stopped. She was like, nope, I'm just acting. I just want to be an actor. I don't want to sing anymore. Well, then a few years later after that, she recorded an album of songs that she wrote. And I remember seeing, I don't remember if it was an interview or if it was just I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but she talked about her experience in the music industry when she first got in. And she was talking about, she said, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just doing all the things everybody told me I needed to do and should do. And she said, and she actually apologized for that first album or two, however many it was. I don't remember. She apologized for it and offered to give money back. She said, I really hope y'all don't take me up on that because I can't afford it.
Yeah.
But it's like, she felt really bad. She said, this new album, she said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's the greatest thing ever recorded, the greatest music ever. She said, but I will tell you that I'm trying. And she took an album to try to be authentic and see who she was as an artist. And I had a lot of respect for that. I did listen to the album, but I don't really remember my impressions, really. So it must not have hit me very hard. But I remember really respecting and appreciating that stance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that came before was not me. That was somebody else telling me what I needed to be. This is me trying to figure out who I am as an artist.
Yeah, and it's hard to recover your image from you being so popular, right? Like, and so the expectation is always set by these amazing pop writers that are, you know, giving you this stuff that's disposable, but yet is like earwigs, you know. They're just gonna sit in there, and you're really gonna remember them for at least a few minutes, and then, you know, coming from that to something that looks more authentic, it becomes, I think, a lot harder to try to, you know, even live up to the expectation of going yourself. Like, man, I was somebody, and now I'm not, and yet I'm authentic. It's as true as I can be to myself, and yet people probably don't prefer it. And, you know, I mean, it's probably a testament to her maturity to go, I don't care, you know, probably. You know, I think I would internally probably care too much about that. And so, thankfully, I have no reputation to uphold when it comes to music. So
there you go. Exactly.
But I didn't find, you know, like myself in that whole idea too. I didn't find who I was or who I, you know, writing and playing until probably 2010, 11. I mean, so it happened way, you know, another, whatever, 12 years later, you know. So it's crazy to think that.
It's a wild ride to look at the music industry, especially those that get kind of picked up or recognized early on, and then their experiences, for good or bad. You know, you see it all over the place. Especially a friend of mine, Christone Kingfish Ingram. I've had him on the podcast before. I don't know if you know of Kingfish.
Yeah.
So he and I are both from Clarksdale. He actually, I think I mentioned this on last week's podcast. He played bass for me at one point when he was like 12 for a few gigs, and like I've known him for like
so
ever.
Cool.
Yeah, and he, like, I watched his struggle as people were pushing him in a certain direction, and I'll be honest, this is me speaking a little out of school, and he may never do this, but as amazing as he is right now, and he's great. He's a great guitar player. He's a fantastic singer. Mm-hmm. When he finally records his first rock trio album, he is going to blow some people's minds because like everybody thinks of him as the next BB King, and like people are trying to, you know, pigeonhole him into this thing. I think he's much more like Alvin Youngblood Hart, and like can do the blues thing and be as authentic and real as you want. But then if you let him go and just let him do, he's going to blow some minds at some point or another in his career. Because I've heard the rock and roll and the funk and the stuff that he plays when he's not just playing blues music. Yeah, and he's a complete monster.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah. The production deal that kind of happened after that whole thing, they had. Mm-hmm. I remember like the first like sit down we had. They're like, "We want you to be the next Bryan Adams." And I was like, I don't even know what you mean. Like, what do you mean? Like, and they're like, well, you know, we want you to be a really good guitar player that can really sing great and have these like really cool, like crossover, like you have a guitar lead in the song, but it's really not about that. It's about the song, you know? And I'm like, all right, I do not want to do this.
Yeah, no, not interested.
Yeah, but out. It's so funny that like on the label side and all that stuff, they're always like, you will be the next X. Like, that's what we're looking for. We've got to sell albums, so we need the next. Here's who you need. Insert name here, you know? Yeah. And it's like, no. You know, the bands that make it, that's not what people are doing. You know, that's just what you do when you have like a warm body and you're just trying to like fill your soul with that warm body. It's like, this is not going to work. So, of course, that did not work out in the long run. Yeah. But yeah, so
you know, for probably the better, if we're going to be honest.
Sure, I don't want to be.
I mean, we already have Bryan Adams. Do we need another one?
He's still alive, you know.
Right,
like,
he's still
let
here.
Him be the Bryan Adams that he always was and is, you know. And so, yep.
Yeah, they try to do the similar thing with my sister and the whole Amy Lee connection.
Oh yeah.
she got really pushed towards that direction for a little while, to the point of, I remember her singing a song, and we used to, we were in a band and we played a bunch and we did a lot of original stuff, probably about 40% original, but we're also playing, venues that are like 3 to 4 hour gigs. So
Wow.
you're not filling 3 to 4 hours with all original material. So we covered
Yeah.
a lot of Evanescence and some other stuff. And I remember one night listening back to recording, because I would record gigs occasionally just to listen back and see how we were doing. Because you can't, I don't care what anybody says, you can't actively listen to what your band actually sounds like while you're playing. You need to listen back.
Yep.
So I listened back, and I remember, like, okay, I've got to get her to stop singing Amy Lee because she sounds just like her.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that's not who she is. She likes that stuff, and that's a style she is into. I was like, you can't just be the carbon copy of somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not going to do it.
No, it'll suck your soul out eventually.
Yep. So, moving away. Sorry, that was a fun tangent that I didn't expect us to go down. But so moving into the guitar land, into guitar world. So
Yeah.
you're playing guitar. You're in Nashville. Still, this is before moving to Arkansas.
Yeah.
You end up doing a lot of session stuff. You end up doing a lot of just playing for folks live.
I did the live thing. And so when I first got out of kind of like the contract situation and all that stuff and transitioned into blues, I look back and I really loved this sort of thing that I started with. But basically, my parents got me into playing clubs, and like I would literally just sit in with blues bands in all around Nashville, which was the coolest thing. And I probably put up a lot of a fight because I'm a little bit nervous with that stuff. I don't like meeting new people and doing new things, and so it gives me a lot of anxiety. It's probably social anxiety, undiagnosed. But but it was so fun. Like it just getting and all the people you meet, and like even people I've met that I didn't, like I didn't even know who they were, that are turned out to be, formative to me later on in life and stuff. And so I started there, but I always knew that I wasn't ever good enough to be a session player. That's not me, and I'm not polished enough, and I also I don't have the wherewithal to do the theory. I took a couple years of theory later on in life because I really did want to try to understand. And my teacher was incredible. He's a guitar player. His name's Tony Palacios, and he knows more about guitar than he's forgot more than I'll ever know. That type
Right.
of guy. And he tried so hard, and I was just like, man, I don't know how to do this. And so, I'm really drawn to jazz. I really do love old jazz, especially like 50s, and I like horn players a lot, and so like I'm really into Sonny Rollins and that kind of stuff. And so I do love the guitar players. Grant Green is one of my biggest influences probably my whole life. But anyway, so I like those two things, but I was never good enough to really like be a session player or anything like that. So that's what really drove me to studio stuff, because man, I think I was trying to recover from music ever since I was 11, 12 years old. And I had done that it was hard, because we were on the road. I didn't even get to go to like regular school. Like I had to go to supplemental schools so I could try to fit in school around touring, like ever since I was a kid. And so that does something to you when you don't have like some sort of childhood. I didn't have, the idea of, hanging out with your friends and all this stuff after school and stuff. And so then basically in 11th grade, I dropped out because I just didn't have any time. Like I didn't have a lot of time. And so at that point, I was really trying to recover when I got out of all of the, music drama and all that stuff. And so I said, kind of with my dad, I was like, man, I really want to do this studio thing. I don't really know all the ins and outs of it, but I've always been drawn to, at this time, like albums are being made for the first time in digital, in the digital realm. We had, radar coming in. Otari radar was huge, and then
Mm-hmm.
Pro Tools came in, right? And so like I'm sitting right in the middle, literally of this, and in the transition from D88s and ADATs to now literally going to digital, and I wanted to be a part of it, and so we started a little studio in our house, and I had a Nuendo rig, which was, Steinberg had just come out with Nuendo. And I had some really cool stuff because we had a friend that actually had a real studio, and he would give me all this stuff. So I had a 1-inch, 24-track 1-inch machine in there, so I could run stuff to tape if I wanted to, and then run it back into Nuendo, all this stuff. And so I really realized that I liked this a lot, and I wanted to probably pursue it. And then a few years later, we had a friend of ours that was an architect and also ran a big studio in downtown Nashville, and he was a really cool dude, and we ended up starting a studio in Cool Springs and did that for a little while. And we also me and my dad ran a company making studio furniture and infrastructure. So we did acoustic treatment, racks, and consoles. We make custom consoles for studios in Nashville and kind of across the United States and stuff. And so that was kind of our thing for the remainder of the years I was in Nashville. I was doing that. Helping to run the studio that we had in Cool Springs. And so, yeah, and to me, those are like, I look back, those were fun years, really fun years,
Yeah. See, my undergrad, I went and got an undergrad in music and audio engineering. So it was really fun because I thought that was what I wanted to do, was work in studios as an engineer.
Yeah.
Maybe, be available as a player, to fill in parts and stuff like that. But I really wanted to work as an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Until I realized that was just not what I wanted to do. Like because I got just a little taste of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went to MTSU outside of Nashville in Murfreesboro there for a couple of years, and then I went to in the borough.
Yeah.
It was a good time. I enjoyed. I went to school for 3 semesters there. I partied for 4. It was great. I really enjoyed my time there in Nashville and the borough. Moved back to the Delta and went to Delta State University.
Okay.
And finished my degree up there because they had just started a recording industry program. And that was great. It was good. I learned a whole bunch, but the biggest thing that I learned was that I didn't have the personality to be the engineer in someone else's studio and like deal with that day-to-day life. And like I enjoyed working on projects and I enjoyed making music, but I did not like being, there's just something about that profession that I was like, I don't have the mentality for this. I don't have the, something about this. It doesn't work for me. I would get agitated and I would get frustrated with people. And I was just, even when we would play live, because I'm very often the guy providing PA, I realized that when I'm putting things together, if something doesn't work right, or if there's an issue, like it unnerves me and unhinges me. Like I get so frustrated. And I was like, I realized this is not the industry for me.
Yeah.
I did live sound for a while. Same thing, just not for me.
Yeah. I couldn't do live sound. That's, ugh.
Yeah. There's nothing like, having a guitar player on stage with a 100-watt amp at 7 and complaining that he can't get enough vocal in the monitor.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let me explain to you about the limitations of this blues bars PA.
In this 40-person venue.
Right. let me explain to you a few things.
This dinner club.
Will they turn the amp to the wall? No. Will they do any of the things that would help me out? No. Actually, it's one of the things, like I remember being I don't know, it's probably in my early 20s, and we're gonna bring this back a full circle for just a minute. I was in my early 20s first time I saw Johnny Lang live.
And there it is.
And he was playing, you remember when he's playing those Fender Tone Masters, not the current Tone Masters, not the solid state things, like the custom shop 100-watt. Do you remember what he used to do with the 412?
No.
He had it flipped on I don't know what it was
It
on.
on the like on the floor, kind of like
Yeah,
up.
he had it
Up.
pointed straight up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he had it pointed straight up. Obviously, had to put something on it so the jack would work.
Yeah,
but
yeah. He
I don't remember what it was. But yeah, he had that thing flipped and turned straight up because it was turned so loud.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I saw him once play I don't even remember where it was. It was in Nashville somewhere, of course. But it was an outside show, like a regular festival type, couple thousand people situation. It was I was like, this is a blues show, guys. Did anybody like tell you that? Because this is like AC/DC is playing. And he's ripping his vocal cords out, because that's the only way he goes is, crazy. And so like, it was great, but I was like, man, this is loud. This is actually loud. So
as someone who likes playing loud, just like every other guitar player on the planet, there are some times where I've been like, yeah, this is unnecessary.
Yeah.
This is a lot. This is a whole lot.
How'd they get away with that with like front of house and stuff, but apparently,
Apparently they do. I mean, headliner and all that, I guess, who's going to tell them no? Not that I've ever gotten the impression that Johnny's like prima donna about his volume or anything, but still, who's going to tell him no? Right?
Yeah. I feel like the whole show is loud. I was like, so like what? I guess nobody really, if there's no noise ordinances and, whatever, like just crank it, But
there's
it was a great show,
I had played outdoors in Oxford, Mississippi. I was sitting in this band that I'd filled in on guitar for them before, but they had a show in Oxford the same day I had a show. They had a day show outdoors, right, for some private party. And their guitar player couldn't make it till halfway through. And so they called me like, hey, can you come fill in the first half of the show since you're going to be in Oxford anyway?
Did you know any of the songs or anything?
Oh, they're playing standards. They're playing party standards. You playing enough function, wedding, party bands, you know all the songs.
It's the same catalog.
Exactly. Just tell me the keys you're in and we're going to go.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want it to sound like the original or do you just want to play and go? If you want to just play and go, I'm perfect. If you want it to sound like the original, we're probably going to need a rehearsal or two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So luckily, most bands I play with aren't too worried about being perfect to the original song. Because let's be honest, I have this conversation with people. People in the bar and the crowd really don't care. As long as they can sing along to it and dance, they're good. Yeah. The only people who care that it sounds exactly like the original is the guitar player in the back of the room with his arms crossed. Yeah. He's the only person that cares.
That's me. That's what I do.
You.
Yeah, I judge everybody. That's why I don't go to live shows anymore because I'm like, I can't enjoy this. I'm such a dick.
It's fine. So I went and I played this show outdoors, and they told me, we had to keep it down. And I was like, really? We're outside. Well, yeah, sure enough, there were cops walking around with sound meters.
Oh, my gosh.
Around town. And apparently they were just about to or had just passed a noise ordinance that outdoor music could not be more than 70 decibels at 10 feet away.
That's
Toilets flush at 70 decibels.
So quiet. Yeah, exactly. That's like impossible.
Like, what? Yeah. It's ridiculous. And sorry, you mentioned noise ordinance, and that made me think of that story. And I was like,
that's like an acoustic show.
Yeah,
So,
it's an acoustic show. No PA. No, that's just, I can sing a cappella louder than 70 decibels.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy.
Easily. It's wild. So, so anyway, digressing before I just get angry at noise ordinances.
One day we're going to talk about pedals, I'm sure.
Yes. So let's back around to pedals. So we're gonna talk about the things you got. Well, also, we've got a Patreon episode if we really need to. If anybody really wants to, So let's talk about some of the stuff you make. Because before this episode, I went on your website and was like, oh, awesome. I'll look at there are 14 models on your website.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Yeah, you make a lot of different things, man.
Well,
so
really, Yeah, I mean, I really like, what was funny is last year, I didn't actually have any aspirations to make fuzz pedals. And then if I'm like super honest and make me sound really inexperienced, I didn't really like even have fuzz pedals until, you know, a couple years ago. I thought fuzz was like not usable. Like
Okay,
the
so you're telling me that you had no aspirations to make fuzz pedals, and you
and then
didn't
all
use
I make,
fuzz pedals, and now
yeah,
10 out of the 14 pedals
yeah,
on
yeah.
your page are fuzz
Because I think
pedals.
that's the idea is like fuzz to me was like not workable in a
Oh,
normal.
sure.
So like when I play now, I don't really, but like I would I would play with a couple stages of gain,
Right.
and that always got me what I wanted, right? Like I wasn't really, but it's because I was thinking like the way that I play and in the tame stuff that I need. When I started to branch out and like look at what actual people use in the world and when they play, like a fuzz pedal is actually really functional. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're building it in a certain way, like depending on the type of music that the person is playing, it could be essential, just
Yep.
depending on what they're using. And so I really started to grasp the understanding that fuzz pedals are awesome, really,
Yeah.
really, really cool. And so it really kind of like was one of those progressions of like I built just I think the first fuzz face I built, I was like, man, you know, you can get great, awesome tones just by putting a bias knob on here that would be functional for somebody that just wants a little bit of like really gritty overdrive.
Yep.
And then somebody that wants the full, sputtery, velcro-y fuzz thing. And all you got to do is change it from this traditional design of not having a bias control to at least having a bias control. And so, and like that's not groundbreaking or anything, but it does like really expand your understanding of like, oh, like these pedals really are functional depending on how they're
Mm-hmm.
built. And so that was like my big focus last year was learning everything I could uh, to whatever degree that is of the fuzz face circuit, because the fuzz face is a incredibly simple circuit parts wise, but
Yep.
it's very hard to make it actually sound good and right. And
Because
so
it's finicky. Because
yeah,
so few parts, any variation matters a lot.
yeah, and any variation actually gives you a lot of different tonal personality. And so even changing transistors,
Mm-hmm.
whole guys have made careers on that, like, Analog Man, where, you choose the sun face you want based on transistor. That's crazy. That's awesome,
Yeah.
because there is so much variation. And so that to me really was appealing to try to figure out how do I like extract all the tonal possibilities that I can and then make this circuit the best that it can be, as far as I know it, and so that was, I built, I don't know, 60 some odd fuzz faces last year, and
Oh, wow.
of 100 pedals total that I sold pretty much last year. And
Wow.
so it was a lot of those. And so my deluxe germanium fuzz and my deluxe silicon fuzz are like my, basically perfect circuit. They're all tuned a little bit differently depending on the transistors I use, that kind of thing. But for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, it's a, you know, modified fuzz face with bias controls for both Q1 and Q2, so both transistors. And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll put an input cap blend, so you'll have a knob that can give you some tonal personality on the front end to give it, treble boost tones all the way down to like super swampy bass, depending on. I only do that for certain transistors, or if a customer requests they want, it built a certain way. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the majority of what I've been building. This year, the big focus was to get into the tone bender family pretty heavy. My Wasp pedal, the Germanium Wasp, is it's kind of a modified version of a three knob tone bender, and I really wanted to get more into like the MK2, MK1, and the Zonk this year. Those are the MK1 and the Zonk are very, very, very hard to build. Those are extremely temperamental, and they're based on having the right transistors with the right leakages and the right gains. And so that in and of itself takes a lot of time. And there are so many good builders out there that do those circuits that I didn't want to jump into just making those until number one, I had enough experience with it to say, okay, I can stand behind this and I can feel confident. This is a good representation of what those circuits should sound like. And then two, I wanted to have reference models, which means you got to invest into what you feel are the most accurate reference models, because there's no hope for me of buying the originals. And so that was another thing. And so it took some time to really get to the point where I would say I'm now pretty confident that when I start to bring those out, that they'll sound where I feel really enthusiastic about them, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like we had similar. I started later in life. I didn't take up guitar till I was 18. So you had already been in a record deal and a production deal by that point. Right. But we had similar initial like influences, and so I also didn't get into fuzz until way later. It was, and I bounced around a few fuzzes trying to find one that I got along with. Like I didn't get along with the muff circuit. I didn't get along with even the rat circuit, which dances that line between distortion and fuzz. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I tried a bunch of stuff. I had tried fuzz faces before, couldn't get into them. Well, luckily I kept trying and I found the one that finally clicked. I don't know that it was the pedal itself. It was just maybe me wrapping my mind around how to use fuzz. I got the Keely fuzz head, which was a swappable silicon germanium fuzz face, essentially. Yeah. And I had it for a little bit, and then I realized, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet, and I ordered a sun face. I ordered the Analog Man sun face.
Oh, that's a big
jump.
It. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the NKT red dot back when it was still available from him.
Nice.
So I ordered that, and I specifically ordered with the bias for a very, very good reason. Are you still based in Arkansas? Are you still in Arkansas?
I'm in San Antonio now.
Oh, gotcha. Well, same difference.
Yeah.
As someone who has probably played your fair share of blues festivals, outdoor blues festivals in the South.
It gets a little hot.
It gets hot as hell.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a bias control on a Germanium fuzz, you can't use that pedal.
Yeah.
In blues festivals in August in a southern state. You just can't do it. And so I made sure to get that. But when I got it, I remember so I got it, I played it, I didn't really add it to the rig, it's like, and even still it's up on the shelf, over here somewhere.
Oh, I see it. Front and center.
Yeah, it's hiding back there.
Yeah, well, it's not front and center. It's centered.
Yeah, and it's sitting next to a tone bender.
It looks like a Morning Glory.
Yeah, because it's just way back there.
Okay.
But it and so finally one gig I made. This is what you do, by the way, when you're a blues player. You probably know. You get a little bored sometimes with the gigs you're playing. Like you're playing the same stuff you've always played, so you got to find a way to make it interesting.
Your 1-4-5 is not satisfying you.
Yeah, it just wasn't even when I add the 2 and sometimes the 6, and it just wasn't.
Whoa,
doing
man,
it for me anymore.
You just went too far. I don't know anything but 1-4-5. That's it. It's a joke. 2? What's a 2?
What's a 2? Oh, then is it a major or a minor 2? But so I took my amp, my guitar, and the sun face. That was my whole rig, and I never turned the sun face off.
Oh wow!
That was my challenge to myself for a gig. Was learn to use your volume knob.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah. I was like,
learn to use your volume knob, and I did, and it was amazing. And actually, I've got a festival coming up in April that I'm really tempted to do the same thing again. Just amp, guitar,
go back to your roots,
fuzz face, Well, I might still take the tape delay. I may have to take the tape delay because that's just a special sound. But
well, and it brings up a huge point too. I mean, they're supposed to be super touch dynamic, and so if you don't, if you don't use your volume control, a lot of people just don't get the right impression of what fuzz face specifically is all about. I mean, it really is kind of that idea. And so I've actually built a few circuits that are like that aren't fuzz too, and like the Woody circuit that I make that I haven't been making a lot of those recently, but it's a tweed style overdrive, but it's like a crank tweed. Uses some old NOS silicon transistors in it that just, I mean, they sound so good, but you can do the same thing with that circuit. If you just kind of pull back on the volume, just put it to 8 or something, man,
Yeah.
it really gives you so much variation. And so I can get away with making that a one knob, unit, because you can vary the gain yourself just by using the volume control. But a lot of guys just do not feel comfortable doing that. And so, and I understand, I mean, it's not something that you normally do. If you're not using pedals, you don't typically use your volume knob that much. You use your tone knobs maybe sometimes, but not your volume.
What?
So
What? Tone knobs? What?
I personally have never used the tone knob, but I literally have gone years, 20 some odd years of playing. I've never used, I don't know how to use them. I don't know what they're for. They just make it sound worse. And so I'm like, I am going to leave them be.
Oh no, I've got to be able to use the tone knob. I probably use my tone knob
or something. That to me seems like the most functional thing to do on the volume is the treble
really?
bleed. Because like that's the issue, right? Like you don't use your volume control a lot of times because it gets muddy, right?
Yeah, see, I like not having a treble bleed, so it's like real weird because, I play behind a lot of singers, and I find that it's really nice that when I roll back the volume, I don't just get a little volume drop. It feels like it affects it, and it does. It affects the frequencies that I'm playing that are coming through my amp, and it pulls away the ones that conflict with singers' vocals a lot of the time. And so suddenly there's plenty of room for the singer.
Yeah.
Just by me rolling back, not just volume, but also getting just a little darker so that they're sitting on top of it. Now, it doesn't work if you're singing with playing with a baritone singer or something like that. But
yeah, for sure.
Female vocalists and tenors.
That's really interesting.
Really well.
Yeah, for sure. The hardest thing for me in building pedals is actually the EQ, because I do more second guessing in the EQ tone stage than anything, because I never know what people are going to use it for, and I've got a myriad of different amps that I try my pedals with, but it's really hard because you don't know if you have enough high end for people, because I typically make things a little bit darker, just because I kind of favor Fender amps and Strats and stuff like that now, which I never did before, but I try to use different gear and stuff, but it really it's hard. It's hard for me to make stuff, but thankfully it's been going pretty decent, so people don't seem to complain about it too much.
Well, then you're doing something right. And I think that is a lot of times the thing that throws people the most from pedal to pedal too, is figuring out where the tone stack falls in the spectrum. Sort of like everybody, Blake from over at the Tone Mob will appreciate this defense of the DS1. Yeah. Everybody hates the DS1. It's because they have that mentality they need to start every knob at noon. No. Take your DS1, roll the tone knob all the way back, and then roll it in until you have just as much treble as you want, and then it's done. Yeah. Well, does that mean the treble might be on 1? Yep. And that is the right setting. Don't be afraid of the extremes of your knobs because you feel like that shouldn't be where your knob goes.
Yeah. I think it really requires a lot of a guitar player sometimes to explore a pedal that's I guess some guitar players might say, well, this is not optimized for me, but yet from the engineering standpoint, it gives you limitless possibilities, right? It's made to, Boss pedals are over engineered, they're very intricate, and so the idea there is you were kind of put in the driver's seat as an engineer, and lots of guitar players, I don't think, and I've seen this over the years of studio and all that stuff, they don't like that. They just want things to work and be simple, and that's why they don't like 10 knobs on a pedal. And I resonate with that too. Like I try to build everything with like a max of 3 knobs if I can. And I do try to get rid of as much, I try to get to 2 if I even possibly could by putting an internal trimmer or something like that. Just because I think that like that's the idea. Like as a guitar player, I don't have a lot of time to like explore these things when I'm out on a gig, and we all know that tone changes from your bedroom out to the gig, right? And
100%.
so you're gonna tweak your knobs a little bit, but you don't have time to like sit there and just like fiddle with this pedal. If it's not working, you're gonna end up ripping it off your board and selling it. And so, and that's something that I've always resonated with myself when I had to play gigs, and like, if I found it immediately left a bad taste if that pedal didn't dial in quickly. And then I was like, well, I'm selling this,
Yeah,
and you don't
use this.
Even it doesn't even matter if you went home, it sounded great again. It doesn't, you're already, it's tainted. So
I have that same relationship with, and so Joel over at Chase Bliss makes incredible pedals.
Yeah.
So I think some of the most incredible pedals that are out there. And I really, really want to love them, but I have a hard time with them because they do so much. They have so many options.
So I had that preamp for a while.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And I thought I was like, I thought that was going to like help me, because I was like, well, it's like all my dirt stages in one. I can just MIDI control, and have it all in one. And I was like, this is the absolute worst thing for me as a guitar player, because now I'm not focused on music. I'm focused on trying to control this one huge brain. It sounded great. The noise
there's
floor
no doubt it was
little,
amazing.
Yeah, the noise floor and the fuzz was like interestingly high. I would have like thought that them of all people would try to engineer that out, but I don't think a lot of people are using it for fuzzes as much as they are the overdrives and the Benson stuff. But yeah, because I went from a Benson preamp to that, because I was like, surely this is going to be even better. It sounds phenomenal, and everybody should buy either of those two things before they buy anything else. Like, but at the same time, for me, I found that it was more distracting than anything else.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
I went from the Benson preamp, not the Mark II, but the the smaller one, to a Timmy, and I don't regret that decision.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of guys do that. So
yeah,
it makes sense. The Timmy's an amazing pedal too. So like, you're not going wrong with any of those. No. I actually use a Klon, and I don't use my Benson.
OG Klon or another one by somebody else?
It's a real one, but
Oh, nice.
It's not OG price. Well, OG price, not crazy prices.
That's cool. It's nice to hear a story from someone who paid the price they should have paid for it.
Yeah, ages ago in Nashville when you can buy anything you wanted to. But I will say I had a Centura too, and it sounds exactly the same. Nobody's gonna like fight over the specifics of like what's wrong with the two, and they look exactly the same. So it's like, what? What's going on here? Like, pay $350, get a Centura, and you will be just as happy. Actually, more happy than somebody that's paying $6,000 for this stupid pedal.
Right.
So, but for me, what's so funny is I used that over the last year, and I've fallen way more out of love with that pedal. It just does for me.
Really?
It just doesn't do it. It's not playing nice with the stuff that I have, but that's like one where I'm not like anxious to sell it. I want to keep it, and especially like reference wise, like you want to know reference tones, you got to go back to the originals as much as possible. So that's something that I will always keep around. But it's like, if it doesn't work, replace it with something that does.
Exactly.
And Timmy is like a great option. So
the reason I like the Timmy, don't get me wrong, the Benson preamp, the regular one, is an incredible pedal, and you won't go wrong with that one either. That one is such a cool pedal. I used to be a tube screamer, then a Klon guy, and I think the thing that happened was I got away from Strats, and I got away from not got away from single coils, but got away from Fender single coils, and I got really into P90s.
Yeah,
and they have that mid-range push.
Yep.
That I didn't need the extra that a tube screamer is giving me at what, like 2.5K, something like that, and not that 1K push that a Klon's giving me. What I needed was something a little flatter, and so that's where the Timmy came in and was just perfect.
Yeah, and
loves P90s.
The thing I love, I mean, I will never be able to get a Benson preamp off my board, and that pedal in and of itself, circuitry-wise, is a huge influence on me. My VFD drive is not based on that, but it basically runs on the same principle of cascading JFETs. And I don't think that there's a better pedal, drive pedal on the market than pedals that use JFETs for cascading gain stages that act like tubes. They don't give you tube-like tone; they give you amp-like qualities, that's a horrible. Nobody wants to hear transparent, organic, or amp-like. Those three suck. But
I tell people, I mentioned on last week's episode, I've played exactly one drive, and in my life that I would truly call transparent, and I've played a lot of drive pedals. And it's been recently, and I'll call it. I didn't call it out by name last episode, but I'll call it out. It's the Lightspeed.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say it. I was gonna say it when you got done talking. I was like, dude, I have to drop the Lightspeed. Dude, everybody needs a Lightspeed. Seriously,
and seriously, and they're like affordable.
Timmy, but like, dude, come on, like it's like it doesn't it is different, and it is, in my opinion, better. I think it
is the new, and a lot of things have come close to being this. I think that Lightspeed is going to be this current iteration, like generation of pedal makers. That's going to be the one that everybody comes back to and says that was the one. Yeah, like sort of like the Tube Screamer was in the '80s. You know,
man, they should. Nick's such a great guy too. But like, honestly, like if that was the only pedal he ever came out with, my gosh, like that's so good. It's a classic. It should be a classic. People should remember it for sure.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about it. It's so affordable. I mean, those are like brand new, under $200.
Yeah, there's no wait list. There's no like crazy clout situation. Right. It's just a great pedal. You know,
just get it. Yeah. And if you want some kind of cool variation on the finish, they're available. I've got one. Mine's what is mine? Edition. I think mine is white with like pink writing. It's fantastic.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a no-brainer. I love seeing that stuff come together like that too, where it's just very unassuming, and a guy, that just did really good work on a really good circuit has success like that. That's so cool.
Makes me want to play one of his amps. I've never played a Greer amp, but
I haven't either. I talk to Nick fairly often. He actually was very kind to help me with a little bit of critiquing on the VFD drive, which I extremely appreciate, because at that time I had nothing. He actually has serial number 1. He bought the first jetliner I've ever made and the first VFD drive, and man, he was very kind with me, and so that was very something that sticks out as a great memory.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, we have crossed over the hour mark, which is about where we try to wrap up the regular episode.
Nice.
And we're going to go over to the Patreon episode. Listeners, if you want to get the extra episodes every week that I record with my guests, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/40watt podcast. That is 40watt podcast. For $5 a month, you get extra content every week that an episode comes out. And you help make this show possible and help me not go broke doing this. Eventually, one day, I'm going to stop saying that, and I'll be able to say your contributions help me get better audio equipment, better lighting, better cameras. Right now, it's just making sure that I don't go into debt doing this.
There you go.
So I really appreciate all of your support. Blake, really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a fun time, and we're going to continue this fun conversation over on the other episodes. So for the rest of you, hope you take care of yourselves. Remember to be kind to yourselves, be good to each other, and make some noise.